Is it strange that the green's not on black?
Could wear black, white, or red.
Okay, give me 1 moment. Should I be true?
All right, here we go. All right, hello everybody and welcome to Couples and Conversations. We are so excited that you joined us today. If this is your first time joining our page, like, comment, subscribe, and get in on the conversation. We are a group of young Black people trying to help other young Black people save our most prized possession, which is families. And we are doing that one couple at a time. Today is our first live session. We're so excited that you joined us. Just a couple things to remember. If you have anything that you want to add to the conversation, any questions, please use that chat function at the bottom and we'll get to those as best as we can. My name is Frank and my wife is Jennifer. And I just want to introduce the couples as we get started. We have Tammy, who is here. And then we also have Toylise and Michael Fowler. Michael's going to be joining us here in a little bit. We have them Crawfords, Erica and Jonathan. And then we have the Greens, Christina and Jason. So again, we are Couples in Conversations. We're so excited that you joined. We do have the topic pinned, but if you don't see it, we're going to talk about it continuously as we go on. So the topic that we're going to be talking about today is it important to fully understand one's true self before getting into a relationship, or is it a process of growth that you can attain throughout a relationship? So we're going to be talking about that. We have another topic that we're going to add for later, but that's where we're going to start. And we are going to kick it off today with the Greens.
So I'll start. All right, so the first question, is it important to fully understand one's true self before getting into a relationship, or is it a process of growth you can attain throughout the relationship? So I wrote a few things down, y'all, so bear with me. I believe that knowing oneself before getting into a relationship will help benefit in the growth of the relationship. When a person already knows what they want, they know what they want and what they don't want, it'll be easier to set the standards at the beginning of the relationship. So you can work within the relationship so y'all can build standards together and ultimately build up the relationship. So I feel like you definitely need to fully understand yourself, because if you don't fully understand yourself, you can't teach somebody else how to understand you, and you can't understand them if you don't even know who you are. You don't know what you stand for, what you will let, if you let somebody walk all over you. It's so too much uncertainty when you don't fully know yourself. However, with that being said, I do feel like once you get into the relationship, you still continue to grow, because once that person show you who they are, you guys grow together and then you'll change.
Okay.
Yes. I think my take is a little bit more in depth with regard to knowing yourself, because I think, especially, I'd like to point out the fact that, you know, our community and where we grew up and how we grew up was unique in comparison to, you know, our counterparts, you know, everybody else in society, especially in America. So, you know, a lot of us have been through some sort of trauma, some sort of issue, some sort of dysfunction. And I believe that's important to understand how that affected you as you've grown older. And usually in your 20s, it really doesn't hit you the same way it does when you're 30 or after you have children, and you start to realize, like, man, some of this stuff that scarred me and messed me up, I'm projecting either onto my spouse, my kids, or, just in how I move about in society. And I think that's very important to know and understand, so you can be able to grow. Without that, you will be, I feel like you'll be, running into a brick wall. Especially when you're dealing with relationships, because both sides deal with different issues and different trauma and different issues. Our generation is the first one that actually got an opportunity to understand how mental issues affect us. Our parents, it was taboo to talk about doing anything with regard to a psychiatrist or even discussing what our problems was. We didn't even have feelings. So our generation is one of the first ones to be able to kind of understand how that plays a part in, basically our existence in relationship, especially.
All right. We going over to them Crawfords.
All right, I'll go ahead and go first. I want to say I totally agree 1000% with what the Greens already introduced with. I feel like it's very important that you need to know who you are before you can even get yourself involved in, any type of relationship for that matter. I feel like you have to understand yourself on so many levels, and there's so many layers to it. You have to understand who you are as an individual, how you are spiritually, mentally, what you're going to be, how you're going to be socially. I feel like that plays a big factor in everything that you do. And one thing that my pastor always says, a man who knows God will know himself eventually. So once you get an opportunity to get to know, who God is, and he'll show you and reveal to you who you are as a person, then you can come into a relationship giving your all to that relationship. However, I go both ways with it, because I feel like you still can grow within a relationship with someone. I often use my husband and myself as like the example to say that I feel like a lot of times I feel like we were too young, if you will. We'll be married, 14 years next week? And we were like 24, 23, 24, 24, 25 when we got married. So I felt like we really didn't know what it was that we wanted, what it was that we needed from each other. And I felt like it caused a lot of issues early on in our marriage. However, I felt like I wouldn't go on this journey with anybody else. I felt like we learned each other. We grew together. We learned how to be adults together. Like, we've been knowing each other since we were 16. So we actually grew up. And I feel like now it's probably more appreciative that we did have that. And I was able to go through those things and those learnings and those bumps and bruises and everything. I appreciate it now that, we're getting older. We'll be 30. I'll be 39 in a couple weeks. So it's like, I appreciate like going through those stumbling blocks with him. Although I felt like it probably would have been a better outcome for us, or we'll be, instead of now getting in our happy stages at 14 years, we probably could have experienced it early on, instead of now when it's kind of getting, we almost 15 years in, but we're finally starting to get happy when we could have been happier at year one. So that's my take on it.
Okay. Jonathan?
I believe it is important to understand yourself before getting into a relationship, but at the same time, it's hard to really know yourself with the circumstances of growing up. So a lot of times you go off of what people say you are, or what you are around. So you're growing every day, especially when you're younger. You definitely don't know yourself. And at my age, at 39 right now, it's still a lot that I don't know as far as about myself, but I'm still learning as far as the relationship. So I believe it's important. It's necessary, but does everybody know themselves before getting in a relationship? No. And getting into a relationship, you actually can know yourself and get into a relationship, and what you see the other person is doing can make you think about the things that you thought you knew about yourself, and it can change everything up. So it's a process that you can have in a relationship, even if you did know yourself or whether you didn't know yourself. So I'm kind of 50-50, but Me personally, I know I didn't know myself. I thought I did. I wasn't taught. I didn't see what a man should be, what a husband should be, a father should be. I didn't see it, so I didn't know. I thought I did. So going into the relationship, I made a bunch of mistakes as a boyfriend, a husband, a father, and I still make mistakes now because it's a lot of stuff that I still don't know. But at the same time, I'm learning and I'm making sure now that the mistakes that I made and the things that I didn't know, that my boys don't make the same mistakes I did, even though they still have to get to know themselves as well.
Okay, going over to Tammy.
I'm on the same page with Jonathan. I don't think, because we're individuals, I don't think we ever will fully know ourselves because of different life experiences and adversities that we may experience. We're constantly changing. However, what I will say is it is very important that you know those core things about yourself. Those core things, when I say core things, I mean in political views, religious preferences, sexuality. You don't go into a relationship on the fence on if you like it men or women. Or, you need to know those core things before entering a relationship. But do I think you should fully know yourself? You may not fully ever know yourself because we're always changing. But that's what make a relationship so great, because you're bringing your differences and you're bringing them to the table and you're learning more about each other as you grow. And that's where that effective communication come in at, because you're growing together and you're communicating those changes with each other so you can make those changes within your relationship to be successful.
Okay, I'm heading over to Fowler Nation. Toy Lee.
I do definitely believe that it is important to, as the panel has said, to have some type of sense of self. I do want to piggyback on what Tammy and Jonathan said, that because we are ever growing and ever evolving as individuals, you can never just wake up one day and say, yep, I know everything about myself. Because that, and then within the next 5 minutes, something gonna happen, and then you're gonna surprise yourself. So it is important to have some sense of who you are, via Tammy saying your core. You should know your core inside and out. But as far as individually and as moving forward as a person in a relationship, you are going to change. And just to add to what Erica said, just like she was young, well, my husband and I, we were younger than that when we got married. And we both had our ideals of what we were and were not going to be as it pertains to being a husband and a wife. And thank God for change, because I can only speak for myself. Had I not changed, I can assure you I would be divorced at this point. So it is definitely important to know some of who you are, and then allow that to mesh with who you are spending the rest of your life with, and then continue to grow and evolve together.
Okay. We have your husband on, I believe. Michael, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I totally agree with my wife. I do believe that there are core issues that you should know about yourself, or core things that you should know about yourself, as far as what you like, what you don't like, what you're willing to put up with sometimes. But we're always changing. I can be one person today and be another person next week, depending on the circumstances and situations that may arise in my life. So in regards to relationship, we have to have the understanding that we're both going to change. And we're not going to be the same person that we were when we met 5 years ago. But we have to be willing to change with one another in regards to that. So it's like a fluidity. You have to be like water. Water takes the shape of any container that it's in, and your relationship should be something like that. You understand that you're water, but you understand that when it comes to your partner, when it comes to life situations,
I think we lost you, Michael, but
And I think I lost.
we got you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
So I agree with what everyone has said as far as you're forever evolving because we're a growing being and nothing can stay the same. However, unfortunately for me, that wasn't my story as far as knowing myself before going into a relationship. I honestly don't even think that's my story now to be able to say that I know myself or am even comfortable with the stage that I'm in. I think for me, subconsciously, because I didn't realize it when I got into the marriage, I think I was trying to be more visible. And that's one thing that led me to the marriage. I've always I grew up thinking that I was invisible. I wasn't present. I didn't show up. And so I didn't have a sense of identity. And so, as you guys know, my husband is very boisterous. He's out there. He's bold. And I guess for me, I thought attaching to that because I didn't have an identity that would help me show up, but that actually overshadowed me even more. And that caused a lot of issues within our relationship because I didn't verbalize it. I didn't communicate my inability to show up. I didn't communicate that I didn't have a sense of identity. He viewed me as having an identity, but it was an identity that he developed for me, not an identity that I related to. And so once I started relating to a sense of identity, that caused another friction in our relationship. And that's something that we've talked about before as well, is he feels like I changed overnight. No, I just woke up. I said I wanted to be seen. And my being seen is still not where I feel like I should be at 30, but I mean, I'm holding space. And so I think that that's a big thing that we have to be aware of. Yeah, people can say that you need to have a sense of identity before you go into a relationship, but there are people like me who went to a relationship and didn't have that, and it's not too late to find that sense of identity. You may not have started out the way that you wanted to, but you can make a change and be whoever you want to be now.
Thanks, babe. So I am probably right down the middle on this topic specifically, just because while I agree with everybody that identity is something that evolves, is something that changes every single day, I agree with that 100%. And I agree that you have to be, you have to understand that relationships and people are fluid. They change every day. They evolve. I'm not the same that I was yesterday. I agree with all of that. But I want to know, and like my wife just brought up, how do you deal with that though? Because it was difficult. She said it very light, casually, but it literally was like overnight. It's something that was acceptable on Monday was unacceptable on Tuesday. So how do you deal with that type of a situation in a relationship when you feel like you are engaging in this identity that is being spoken about, is being perpetuated, and then you wake up tomorrow and everything that happened for the last 7 years is just not okay? So how do you deal with that? Because with no identity, you really have nowhere to go. So how do you deal with that? Go ahead, Felice.
So it was just as my husband said, you know, when you see that change, you got to be willing to roll with it. Yeah, it may have seemed like it was a flick of a switch change, but and to you it may have happened as quickly as that. But now it's up to you to decide whether you're gonna fight or flight. You gonna roll with it, or you gonna cower away and say that no, I can't handle this. It's all a part of the relationship and making it work.
But we also are talking about, and I really don't mean this in an offensive way at all, but we are also talking about women that have expectations and expect those expectations to happen almost instantaneously. Because that was my situation. I see the hands. Relax. So thank you. Jennifer, you're next.
Like what Lisa said, I mean, well, kind of like you were saying too, how you felt like it happened overnight. It really didn't happen overnight. There was different instances, different things that I kind of threw out there that you just kind of paid or just skipped over because I think you thought that it was just going to pass by, like, oh, she's just in a mood or whatever. You weren't paying attention to the signs that I was trying to give you. And then once I realized that you weren't picking up on that, I was like, okay, let's just bust through the door. Because he's not hearing the knocks, he's not seeing the notes in the windows. Let's bust through and see what happens. But as a husband or even as a wife, like Twillies was saying, like, you got to be willing to change. I mean, you gave your all at that commitment. We went down the aisle. We said, till death do us part, bad and good days. And so it may seem like a bad day because you don't know what to do. You're lost. It's like we started all over. Like you're dating me. And someone once said marriage is like a first date all over again. Like you are constantly dating your wife. You never stop dating. And so going back to the basics, let me get to know this new person, because even if our story wasn't our story, I was still going to change. We got married at 22. I'm 30 now. It's not possible for me to still have the 22 mind frame. Well, it shouldn't be possible for me to still have the 22-year-old mind frame, and you shouldn't want that. You should want me to mature as a woman. You should want me to mature because now I'm a mother and I wasn't before, and so that changes you. And even outside of the four walls of our house, you know, just living in this world changes you. And so you should be able to adapt to that just like you adapt outside of this. And then you also have to think about the other components that plays into this. Because when it came to my loss of identity or the sense of not having identity, there was depression and anxiety mixed within that. And so I think that is why you were so lost. It's because depression wasn't something that you had to deal with, but it was always a monkey on my back. It was a generational curse. And so I feel like although you're saying it was a overnight thing, I think you were still coupled with all the other things that came along with it.
Okay, Tammy, then the Greens, I don't know, I saw your hand, and then Erica.
Okay, first I want to say, Mills, don't make this into a male versus female thing, because male expectations are just as high as women. Okay, let's get that straight.
But I was not speaking about the level of expectation. I was speaking about the time needed to attain the expectation, because it just
men expect things very rapidly, in my experience, but that's not what I wanted to say. I just wanted to clear that up.
Absolutely, I agree, Tammy.
Okay, don't play with me. But anyway, and I agree with what Twillies and Jennifer says. However, I think if you have respect for your mate, it's not something, if you're changing, it's not something that he should just pay attention to and just notice and just move along with it. I think, again, if you respect your mate and you respect the relationship, you should be discussing these things, discussing your expectations. Baby, you know what? I'm going through some things. I'm changing. I don't know what the hell is wrong. I don't know what is wrong with me, but right now, I'm not the same person. I'm evolving. I'm changing. We need to talk. Like, I think a conversation is just what's needed. And if you have respect for your mate in your relationship, that conversation will happen, opposed to thinking they should just pick up on things.
Thank you. The Greens, I don't know which one of you. I just saw your hand.
Man, women be, no, I'm just playing. But no, I think the expectations got to be realistic too. I can't go from eating a steak, potatoes, and all of a sudden you want me to go and be vegan. You know, it's not a situation where I can go from 10 all the way down to 1. And a lot of people have a lot of outside influences that dictate their emotions and how, you know, things are how they're going to handle things in a relationship. It might be a cousin, it might be a sister, it might be somebody's mother or father that's giving them advice that may not be necessarily good for the overall health of that particular relationship. And also, it might be something from an outside influence they might see in the media. I mean, regardless of what it is, but it has to be something that is beneficial for the relationship overall. And it just like, if you know who you are, I mean, like, you're not gonna really know who you are. My take on this is based off of what you've been through. and not put that person through that in order to work through those issues. So I think it has to be something that's realistic too. You can't expect somebody to go to 0 to 100 overnight. And if it's a situation where the expectation is there, calm down, relax. If that expectation is there, then you have to, I think somebody mentioned have a conversation, but you got to be honest with yourself. If you can't expect things that you're not willing to give, if you want somebody to push, you got to be willing to pull. You know, it's not a situation where it's one-sided. And a lot of times with women, it's a situation where they want to receive and don't want to give. And, you know, not all women, just mine.
Don't mute it. It's
Mute
on
time.
No, just real quick, I just wanted to add this 2 cents. People come from different lifestyles, different backgrounds, and then they try to become one. So it's impossible to completely know yourself. You may be one person when you're single, and then when you get into that relationship, you somebody completely different because the relationship built you into that. So I feel like that while yes, you need to know yourself and understand yourself, if you completely know yourself, going back to what Tam said, then how are you going to grow in that relationship? Because for me, I feel like I'm a know-it-all. I feel like I know it all. But then when I got with Jay, I realized I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that, but I feel like he taught me a lot. But if I stood strong on that know-it-all, like, I don't need you, I got this, then our relationship wouldn't. Hey. Oh, then our relationship wouldn't have been able to grow.
Okay, go ahead, Erica.
Christina, you don't know a fourth of what you think you know?
Right.
I'm sorry, I had to say that. But no, actually, kind of going back to what we were saying, no, I agree with what the young lady said before me, as far as like, you know, if something comes up, yeah, you're supposed to change whatever role with your partner. But I totally agree with Tammy. A conversation is warranted. You can't just, you know, have these expectations and just roll out of bed. Okay, now you got to change and you got to do this, that, this, and the third, just because, you know, because you feel like that's the way it should be. I feel like, yes, the signs were there. The signs have always been there, or the things that I needed you to know about me, you didn't pay attention to it. So it's for me to actually have a conversation with you and say, Jonathan, hey, this is my expectation at this point. Things are changing. We need to work towards this, and then give him that opportunity to say yay or nay, or yeah, babe, we're going to work on it. Not just to spring it on somebody and say, no, you need to change, flat out, period. You need to change. So that's my take on that. But I did want to say too, there was something that Jason just said, and it kind of stung me a little bit about people having outside influences. So I'm a strong believer in you make your own decisions. So outside influences shouldn't have anything to do with whatever decision you decide to make. It's all on you. I'm dealing with that right now, where people feel like I have something to do with such and such and such because of such and such. No, people grown out here in these streets. People gonna do what they want to do. So you can't say that an outside influence, people may have outside influences to make you do this and then the third. And I guess that just kind of goes back to you knowing who you are as a person. Don't try to make it seem like somebody put you out there to do this and that. No, you grown. You make your own decisions. So outside influences shouldn't cause you to do anything. I just wanted to say that because Jason said it, and I totally don't agree with that, because people, we all grown out here, and everybody gonna do what they want to do because you want to do it, not because of what somebody told you to do.
Thank you, Timmy. I'm coming to you, but I just want to say, I see you, Charlize. I just wanted to say, because I hear all of y'all saying, yeah, there needs to be a conversation. Yeah, there needs to be time and yada, 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 and blase splee. But the reality is, it does not happen like that. In real time, it doesn't happen like that. And like my wife specifically said, she was dropping hints and she was showing the signs and I wasn't paying attention. Talk plain to me. I don't drop me no messages and no signs.
If you don't get talking plain either.
Claim your time, please. Thank you.
I'm just saying, be real, shame the devil.
I'm just saying, I want you to talk plain to me. I don't want no subliminal messages. I don't want you to be like, oh, it's in between the words. Just come and talk to me. And I feel like that is a trait or a characteristic that a lot of women that I know.
Here we go with women again.
I'm telling the truth. Speak, bro. Speak it. Stop me.
Listen, First of all, I'm talking about my personal experience.
Right.
That is a characteristic that happens often, and there's usually never any recovery time. I don't have an issue with changing, because I'll be the first one to admit my wife upgraded me in a huge way. I'm talking about 2 to 9, and I appreciate that. But you cannot spew out these expectations on July 7th and tell them, oh, and by the way, these are due by July 8th, because it doesn't work. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Tammy.
Mills, I'm gonna need you to refer to Jennifer and not women, okay? Thank you. But anyway, just going back.
Jennifer, because he wasn't talking about me.
Women issue, and it's not a women issue, okay? Now, Jason, I wanted to respond to something Jason said, and he said that expectations will change, something to that extent. And he said, but it shouldn't be like from 0 to 10, as if it shouldn't be so drastic. But I'm here to tell you, baby, you never know what's going to happen in life. You cannot predict life. And you never know what may happen that's going to drastically cause an influence on your relationship or marriage. So therefore, you can't say that it shouldn't be this way. I mean, if we all had the perfect life and wanted it to be a certain way, we will all wish that it wouldn't be that way. But because we're living in this imperfect world, things happen. And when things happen, you just have to be prepared when they're happening. Meaning, you got to know what you need to do when these drastic things happen. You need to know that you need to pick up your Bible. You need to get some spiritual guidance. You need to get maybe some therapy, because otherwise you will not have a successful relationship, because these drastic things will happen. And
why do you
these drastic things happen? Only the strong survive.
Why do you get a pass for drastic things happening? Drastic things happen.
Who said you get a pass? I didn't say you get a pass. I said you need to prepare yourself and equip yourself for when these drastic things happen.
Right, but see,
but that's essentially you're saying it's okay for these drastic. I'm not
saying it's okay. I'm saying that's real life, baby. That's real life.
It's inevitable. It's going to happen. That's what she said.
Smack you in your face whether you want it to or not. You have no control over it.
I hear what you're saying, but what I'm saying is it's unacceptable. Jennifer,
says who? Well, tell that to our God that it's unacceptable.
That's my perspective. Thank you very much for reclaiming your time. Go ahead.
Don't reclaim my time.
So I agree with all of you guys as far as the communication piece. I agree now, but that what we're talking about is early on in a relationship. And so we communicated, or I threw out signs, but our communication wasn't effective. And so that's what the issue was. It wasn't that I didn't tell him that these things were happening, or I didn't express what I was realizing, because I think that I was late on my changes too. I didn't necessarily see them coming up because they kind of surprised me too. But another thing is, you also have to be aware of the expectations that you put on yourself, because my husband keeps saying that, I changed on July 7th, and then on July 9th, that was the expectation for the change. That was the expectation that he put on himself that he couldn't meet himself. And so you have to be aware of your own expectations and the expectations of your spouse, and they have to be somewhat similar. I'm not going to say they're the exact same, but they do have to be similar. Otherwise, you guys are going to be fighting about the actual expectations and not really working towards the actual situation that's at hand. But when it comes to identity or knowing yourself and growing with your spouse, I agree with Tammy. Like, you have to be prepared, because life is going to come. Nobody knows what tomorrow is even going to bring, or even 10 seconds on this call, what a topic is going to come up and we're going to have to address it. And so you do have to equip yourself with the word, or just meditate within yourself to know yourself and your self-control and your reaction time and what that looks like, because you got into a marriage or got into a relationship in order to grow with someone. There's always going to be a point where you come to a halt of the growth that you can do by yourself. God created us to be relational creatures, which means we need other people or other things in order to fulfill our greatest life calling or desire or whatever. And so you need people around you. So although we're talking about marriages, but it's also friendships and family. Those things impact you, and you have to know how to operate within those relationships as well. And knowing yourself is important in those relationships. How Erica was talking about making your own decision in your family or whatever, people talking into your ear. You have to know yourself and know your boundaries and your limits, and not allow them to penetrate other areas of your life if they're not warranted.
Thank you, Jonathan. Coming to you, and I agree with what you're saying, Jennifer, and I hear what you say, but
Hey, don't talk about the expectation. Take ownership. Thank you.
I am saying that in this situation specifically, yes, it was very early in our marriage, and yes, we have established effective communication where we grow together now. However, I did not have the opportunity to say, oh, I'm gonna get this done by December. It was, this needs to be done by September.
And that's what I'm saying. What's the alternative? Because if a person doesn't adjust the way you think they should adjust, what's the alternative, Tammy? That's what I'm saying.
But no, because I disagree with that. Because just because someone is changing doesn't mean that you automatically have to hop on and like, oh, I agree with that. But you guys do have to figure out how you guys work together with this new identity. It's not just because I'm this person, you have to accept me as I am and do as I say because I'm the queen. No, it's not that, but I am a different person. How do we function as a couple as me being this new person?
Correct, but
right, but that takes time though.
And I think that's a great point. However, right, if we are going to join together, thrust forward and propel, there has to be time for that thing to naturally progress. Because if we do not change in the time or when you say it, there is the silent treatment, which we talked about before, that doesn't work. And then there's the attitude, and then there's the withholding. So there's all of these consequences that we then have to deal with because you have now communicated your expectation and there is no opportunity for me to grow. I don't mind the challenge, but we have to have the opportunity. We're going to Jonathan, reclaiming your time. We're going to Jonathan. Go ahead, Jonathan.
No, I just wanted to say real quick, me personally, I'm glad that I didn't or I don't know my true self, because it's a lot that I wasn't able to learn or see. That getting with Erica, I was able to learn from her, from what she was able to get from her family background and what she grew up around that I didn't get. So I'm glad that I didn't know myself, because I was able to learn. A lot of times when you think you know yourself and you know everything, you can't get nothing from nobody else. So I'm glad that I didn't know myself. And I'm pretty sure it's a lot that Erica didn't know that she got from me, even though I'm not trying to give her no brownie points or nothing like that, because I learned more from her than she learned from me. But it's true. There's a lot. I grew up, no father, my mother barely there, so I didn't know a lot. I had nobody to tell me this and tell me that. Didn't know nothing about church or nothing like that until I met Erica. So when I met Erica, it's when I started seeing and I started finding myself. I started learning stuff about myself when I met Erica. So I'm glad that I don't know myself, or that I didn't know myself. And I'm still learning stuff from her now. And you know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to get no brownie points from later, but I thank my baby for what I learned from her. You know what I'm saying? That's all I want to say.
The Greens, Twilise, and
give Jonathan some tissue because he about to cry.
You bet.
I don't cry.
Hey, did your voice start cracking up? Cause I heard it at the end. Hey, your knees get weak. Your baby make your knees get weak, dog. That's what happens. Anyway, back to Tammy. Back in response to what you said, if you expect someone, and I get things happen. People go through trauma in life when you marry and before you marry. But if it's a situation where you expect me to change on a dime, then it's not going to happen. And what's the alternative? And that's the way I, even if that's not what you meant, that's the way that I took it with regard to how you said it. And so if you expect somebody to change on a dime, it's not going to never happen. And you're still going to be frustrated with that person time after time.
I don't think anyone should ever expect for anyone to change at the drop of a dime. That's not how change works. That's not how change works. So I'm not feeling what you're saying, because I never said that, because change, you're so used to doing things a certain way, and now all of a sudden you have to change. That takes time. So, I mean, in the meantime, I think you guys need to compromise, talk it out, work it out, try to find different solutions or things like that. But I don't think anyone expects for someone to change overnight, because that's not possible.
Thank you, Tammy. We're going to you, Elise, but I want to just put this comment that we have from Rodney Savage. She said, relationships are the great revealer. Alone you can hide, but in relationships, the real you is exposed, and you're forced to learn, change, and grow. And I think that is absolutely 100% true. And again, to this situation, and I think it goes back to what you said and what I heard, right? Because there is a way, when you love somebody, when you're in covenant relationship with somebody, and they say something to you and they deliver an expectation or a need or a want to you in a way that is like, I need this, we naturally want to attain that. We want to achieve that. We want to get there. So when it's presented in a way that challenges us, it's like, oh, we kind of need to do this like right now, because this was presented in such a way that it made it almost as if it was an emergency. You know what I mean? So that may be a situation where it was what you said versus what I heard. And I'll accept that. Go ahead, Elise.
I just wanted to say two things. Number one, when it comes down to change, the two things that we should realize, especially in a relationship, is that change, no matter what stage you are in, is inevitable. It does not matter what stage of life you are in, what stage of your relationship you are in, change is going to happen, even down to the ideals and things of how you treat your kids. Because, probably everybody on this phone know that my husband and I have very different ways of raising up our kids, especially when it was only just the big three. So you have to understand that no matter what happens, change is one of those things. And secondly, when those changes come and they arise, as long as you are willing to be the change and to change, then the change is not so bad. Like Tammy said, no matter how drastic that it may be, because we all can agree that life can throw you some crazy changes and some boomerangs of changes that you thought, had went away, and then boom, it come right back in your face. But when you are willing to understand that, oh, okay, this is something that I have to deal with, this is something I have to go through, that makes it easier to adjust and to adapt and to grow and move forward.
Agreed. Jennifer?
I agree with what everyone is saying, and just to Jason's point, I don't think anyone, or at least I was not saying that it's supposed to be automatic, and that's why I said I think that was the expectation that he put on himself. But one thing that I feel like played into our relationship was the acceptance piece. I think for him, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it took him a while to accept the change, because a lot of our arguments was, well, you just changed overnight. How am I supposed to meet that demand? Instead of actually focusing on the changes or the relationship as it is now. And so I think that we were having a struggle with adapting to the idea that there is something different in the relationship instead of focusing on the actual new relationship.
All right, Erica.
I think everybody pretty much summed it up. I too agree that it's not, you don't just force it on anyone. And it just, it goes back to all the conversations that we've been having leading up to this moment is, effective communication, being able to take accountability for your part in the change, being able to give and take when we said that, compromise. It just comes back to everything that we've been talking about leading up to this moment right here, that when someone does change, and like Twali said, you have to just be willing to accept that change is going to happen regardless. Whether you want it to happen or not, we're all still, like everyone said, we're fluid. We're growing every single day. And like I've already said before, I like a challenge anyway. So to me, it just helps me to become a better person. So, being able to change and just, and being able to accept it. If Jonathan came to me and said we needed to discuss some things, then that's great. I just think it's all about presentation too. You can't just force somebody to do something. It's just about your presentation and your delivery. Again, going back to something we already discussed, being able to just talk to your partner to help them to understand what it is that you need from them right now at this moment, because things are changing. And then we did make that vow to say, we're going to be through this, through better, through worse, whatever. We said that we were going to deal with each other and stick it out. So if I feel like this change may be a little bit for me, but we can talk about it and we can discuss it. And at this moment, then we can compromise to come, to be better. And I feel like if you do it that way, then you'll be able to grow together instead of it just being a one-sided situation.
All right, we're at the point in our episode where we are going to do a rapid fire question, and we're starting with the Greens because I saw your hand and I want to start with you. And the question that I want to pose, and I would love everybody to just take 60 seconds to respond to the question, 60. When you are presented with the challenge of changing in a relationship or a changed expectation, how do you deal with your spouse, your partner, or your mate's response to that change? How do you effectively handle dealing with that request?
Yeah, because I know I gotta think. So okay. I had raised my hand before you asked that rapid fire question, so I really need to just say real quick. And it was pretty much a quick question I wanted to pose to the group as well, because my husband seems to think that he changed overnight. That's what, every time we're muted, that's what he keep doing. Tell him how I changed overnight. And so my quick question that I wanted to ask the group is how, which is similar to what you just said, how do you deal with that change or the lack thereof? Like, okay, so when I first met Jason, he was super, super aggressive. And so, which is something that needed to change. So if he had not, and he had changed that, he did change that, not as overnight as he liked to think he did, but he did change it. But if he had not changed it, what then do we do if our spouse does not change something that is a dire need to change? And I'm asking that because some things that Jason may say that I need to change, and we're 8 or 7 years in come August that I still have not changed. So does that mean like you walk away, you give up? Like how do you handle that situation if you feel like there's a dire need for something to be changed and that spouse is not changing it?
I'll start.
I'll answer that. No, I'll answer that question. It's the rapid fire. She want to pose that to me. I can tell you how to do that.
I'm going to reclaim your time, Jason. We'll come back to that. So I'll start, and then we're going to go around the room. So I believe that if there's a dire need of something needing to be changed in a relationship, I think, like I've said before, you have got to create a dope space in your relationship where communication is 100% open, free, and honest. This is something that it took Jennifer and I 7 years to create. So it literally, before everything was it was I am offended. I don't want to hear that. I'm not trying to hear that. I don't want to be challenged. And one thing that we learned from some people that are on the chat right now is rebuke without relationship breeds rebellion, right? So if you have not solidified the relationship and if you have not created that dope space, then that dire need of change is not going to happen. 1, 2. And you have to mature in relationships. You gotta be mature. You have to understand that you're not gonna do everything right. You're not gonna say everything right. You're not gonna be 100% all the time. And you have to welcome that. If I did not welcome that Frank is not perfect, Jennifer and I would be not anywhere near close to where we are today. But I had to welcome and understand and accept the fact I got some areas that need to be tempered a little bit, and I had to allow her to do that. Tammy, Twillies, Jonathan, Michael, Erica, Jason. That order.
Okay, so I think the first thing you need to do is you need to understand that we're living in an imperfect world and we all are imperfect creatures. And knowing that, I think you need to go swallow your pride, and I think you need to just take on the challenge of change head on. You can't help that change needs to happen. So you just have to handle the situation. You or your mate. I don't care if it calls for y'all to be in a room 24 hours. Fight it out. Figure it out. You have to figure it out. What we're going to do, we know change takes time. What are we going to do in the meantime to make this change work or happen effectively? What you say, Mills? Because you seem like
nothing. Toilies.
Okay. The answer to my answer is that, you know, as far as change coming, you have to ask yourself, or as far as your spouse is concerned, is this, do they really want to change? Because like in response to what Christina was saying, if it is something dire that needs to be changed, you have addressed that we should change this and there is no change, you have to wonder, okay, well, do you really want to change? And within a relationship, I personally feel that if you love me the way that you say you do, and this is a thorn in our side in this marriage, then I'm not saying that you should be all willy-nilly, you know, and forget who you are, but this is something that you should want to do to help to continue to edify our relationship.
All right, Jonathan.
I agree with Tony's. If change is part of making the relationship or each individual better, then I mean, I know I'm for it, and I'm pretty sure my wife will be for it as well. So I mean, change is all about being better. You don't want to stay the same, because if you stay the same, then you'll never grow, you'll never get nowhere. So I'm pretty sure we be on the same board, on the same page as far as change. I'm pretty sure she will listen to me, I will listen to her. Not saying that will happen just like that, but I'm pretty sure we'll be on the same page.
All right, Michael.
I believe that people just, how I handled it, when I wanted to change from Twillies, I specifically gave her some time to change, to make the change. Sometimes my expectation wasn't what she met up to, because she had her own expectation. Sometimes she was like, boy, bye, I don't know what you're talking about, get real. But I was willing to repeat myself numerous times. And then if there were times when she just didn't want to listen, I just had to walk away for a little bit. Realize that I know I love my wife, and I know that we can all change. We all have to change, but we do have to allow that time. And my time may not be what she's able to fit into, so I have to allow her a little bit more time. Now, there are some times when, like Jonathan said, you know, people have to change, but some people don't change. Some people are just stuck. Some people are not willing to change, whether they love people or not. But that means that the ball is in your court to say if that's something that you want to deal with. Somebody who's not willing to change. And though you may love them, you know, at this point in time, are they a right fit for you? You may not want to ask that question, but I mean, I made it 15 years. I'm not gonna lie to you. There were times when I thought about divorce. Like, is Twillies really the person for me? Is this what I want out of my relationship? I'm not gonna lie to you, I did. And I'm sure she posed that question to herself too sometimes.
Yes, yesterday.
But both of us were willing to make the change, and no matter how minute that change might have been, that opportunity to change was still there. But if you're with someone who's not trying to give you an inch at all, who at least is not even trying to put forth the effort, then the ball is in your court, and to say, hey, well, maybe this is not what I'm willing to deal with. And you have to give yourself the time period. Maybe you have 30 days, maybe you have 60 days, maybe you have a year. Each person is different. But at that point in time, the ball is in your court, and you got to make a decision that's best for you at that time individually.
Thank you. Erica?
So I have to agree 1000% with what Michael just said. I feel like you try your best to work together to, deal with the situation, work together and change, especially if it's something dire. If it's something that really just needs to change, like Michael said, you propose it, you've talked about it, you've discussed it, but you feel like you don't want to change. And at some point, you have to look at it within yourself. And this is all about knowing who you are as a person. Is it something that you're willing to deal with? I'm not going to lie, a few years into 2013, at one point, I felt like Michael said, is this what I want? Is this what I'm willing to continue to deal with? No. So what I did, I left. So because it wasn't something that I wanted to deal with. I didn't want to deal with it. So you need to change. Sometimes you have to put some drastic measures. If you done already talked it out, you done prayed it out, you done did everything that you possibly could to get this person to change. They wouldn't do it. Okay, so now I'm going to have to do something drastic myself. And I cannot afford to continue to go through this. I just can't. So I left. And that was me dealing with the change because I was tired of asking for change. Then when I removed myself from the situation, I removed myself from the equation, and then it was noticed that, you know what, I do love her and I do want to change. So, and that it brought us together. Not saying we didn't have any bumps, we still didn't have no bumps after the fact, but it's all about being, I feel now 1,000 times better than I did before in our marriage. But I feel like I had to do something to let you know, bro, I don't have to deal with this. I don't have to take this. It's either we're going to work together and we're going to change things, or I can go. So there is still some times where you have to take drastic measures to get what you need done as far as change is concerned. And if you see that your partner is just not willing to compromise and be there for you and love you and change and work together, then hey, something got to happen. Something got to shake, because I don't have to take this.
You don't even have to say you left that many times, though.
But I did. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But I'm right here with you, baby.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
I agree with what everyone is saying, but I would also take it a little bit deeper as well, because as far as on this call, we all made that commitment and walked down the aisle. We committed to each other, and we said that we wanted to grow together. So what is it that's causing you to not want to change? Like, is there something underneath that I'm not aware of that's preventing you from being able to accept the changes that need to happen? Was it something tied to your family, your friends, or do you think people are going to view you different? Like, when we were younger, people always say, oh, your girl got you whipped and stuff like that. So like all of that stuff kind of plays into it. So what is causing you to feel as though you can't put, in a sense, this relationship first because it is a dire need in order to make this relationship successful? And then also, like we were talking about before, you have to come to that realization that your spouse is there because they want you to be your greatest self. They're not going to tell you something that is detrimental to who you are or steals away your identity or is trying to hurt you in some way. They are just highlighting something that they think that maybe you missed. Maybe you didn't realize you're not achieving your greatest potential because of your attitude problem or the way you interact with other people. Because sometimes, like, my husband has to tell me to fix my face. I have a face issue. Like, everything that I'm thinking is on my face. I got mad attitude, arresting, I don't like you face, and I wasn't aware of it before. Like, someone told me they thought I was mean when they first met me, and it was just because I was in deep thought. And so I could have took that, or I probably did take it, when he first told me as offensive, and got defensive and didn't allow myself to accept that necessary change. But what other opportunities would I have missed out on? Who would have passed me by because they thought I was an angry Black woman because I couldn't present myself appropriately? And so it's having that trust in your spouse that they want you to be the greatest you, and accepting that journey and what comes along with it. Because change isn't easy. It's a challenge. It's people challenging you and you challenging yourself to be something different.
This conversation is so good, and thank you guys so much for joining. We are going to actually continue the conversation. We're going to end the live, and the continuation of this conversation is going to be posted on Thursday. So we are going to continue this conversation, continue with the second topic, and then we're going to post it on Thursday. Thank you for your likes, for your comments. Please share this video, and please come back on Thursday because we are going to continue to go deep, because this is an area where we see that there are some things that we need to grow in, and we want to help everybody in their relationships. We're going to address, you know, Erica talked about she left and taking drastic measures. So we're going to talk about that. Jason raised his hand, so he has a comment. So we're going to continue the conversation. And then on Thursday at 8 p.m. the same time, we are going to broadcast the remaining of this conversation, and feel free to include your comments there. Again, if you have not liked this page, like, comment, subscribe. We are also on Instagram at Couples in Conversation. You can go to our YouTube page, Couples in Conversations, and you can find our episodes there. We just ask that when you post, please use the hashtag #GetIn, the letter N, on the conversation. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on continuing the conversation.